that are going to talk about prop making. In particular, we're going to talk a lot about the sculpting of the cowls with the preeminent master of said field. But I'm going to start to my far left and introduce Mr. Chad Van Wy of Hoku Props. There's only one mic, so share, and either if you want to project like me, or if you're soft-spoken, grab the mic. Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about your prop making history, experience, things you like to work with, expertise-ish?
Hey everyone. Oh, there. Okay. I've been doing prop making for...
I'm just going to project. So I've been doing prop making for about 6-7 years now. On and off, I go back and forth between several other jobs, but this is definitely what I love doing. I've worked on music videos, I've done a lot of side projects, indie movies, but really it always kind of comes back to the whole cosplay community. And, my workflow is somewhat different than a lot of other people's. I started off kind of in the game world. I learned 3D modeling and animation, and that ended up directing me more towards fabrication using equipment. So CNC machine, laser cutter, 3D printer, that sort of process. So I'll model it out, right? And then I can load that up. I can generate passes or whatever you want to call it in techie terms. But that'll give me a finished product. This is 3D printed. Most of this suit of armor is 3D modeled and then unfolded. It's all EVA foam. It's been laser cut. So that's really what I do. It's got a whole lot of accuracy. I don't have to worry about symmetry. I know Sean is amazing with symmetry. I can't do what he does, so I let a computer do that. But yeah, that's me. If you have any questions, let me know.
Good segue to Sean Reeves of ReevzFX.
Hi, I'm Reeves from ReevzFX. I've been doing this about 10 years. Originally I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I always, in high school, the struggle was always comic books or prosthetic makeup effects. And I'm a huge Batman fan, and I'm sure if anybody, I know. I always wanted a bat suit. And you know, before there was like internet and like, I'm dating myself here, like, I would just try and find the guys that worked on movies and ask them questions. I'm like, hey, how do you do this? Like, you know, I'm stuck. What do you use for rubber? Like, how do you mold? How do you cast? And they were so flattered that someone would ask them anything because they're usually like behind the scenes guys. Nobody cares. So they would just tell me everything. They're like, oh, we use this. Don't do this, but do this. So just for trying to learn how to make a bat suit, that just brought me to, hey, I wonder if I can make this. I wonder if I can make that. And it just sort of snowballed into what it is today. I just make stuff that I like, and I do it the old school way. I sculpt everything out. I do work with some 3D printing. If something has to be machined or super symmetrical, I'll do that. But most of the time, I try and tackle it, you know, the sort of more organic way. I'm really bad at math, so I find that you need to know math to kind of really accurately get a 3D print to come out nice or fit properly. So yeah, I've been doing it about 10 years. Yeah, the long answer.
Cool. And Nicole Marie Jean.
They sound really fancy. I'll try not to fart. So. That's what he said, so you know, I'll behave. I have been cosplaying for, let's see now, it's 4 years, going to be 5 years. I got into cosplay after I went to my first convention in 2010, fell in love with the idea. I've always been an artist, always been into arts and crafts. That was the thing I loved to do, and it was encouraged from my parents. And so I fell in love with being able to do art and show off your love of the characters. So I started doing cosplay and became obsessed right away. And I was going to any convention I could find. I actually met him at one of my first conventions. We were from the same town in New Hampshire. And from then on, I was just doing, improving myself as an artist and doing bigger and better things. I don't do commissions for other people. I just make my own costumes and flail about at conventions with everyone. I work with all different materials. I work with wordless. That wasn't a virus. I work with Warbla, a thermoplastic, which I absolutely love, but also work with like garbage and egg cartons and whatever I find in a dumpster and try to make it look cool. And I do some sculpting, I do smaller items, but yeah, that's what I do, cosplay. So I dress up and just jump around and dance. So.
Cool. Why don't we start with some of the technical aspect, and Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about the sculpting process and making, you know, one of these awesome cowls and how you do it. Yeah.
Okay. Usually I start with a clay sculpt on a generic armature. I have 4 different sizes that I use, but I found that the most common size is about a 24-inch head size. You know, if someone's got a smaller head, they can always pad it out, but there really isn't anything you can do if the cowl is too tight. So what I try to do is I just go for the not too large, but not too small, like companies like Ruby's, who have the license for like Batman and like most of the other in Star Wars, they make everything gigantic. I've been there, I've seen what their specs are supposed to be, and it's for legal purposes, so no one gets it stuck on their head. So I try to go down from that. 24-inch head size, I start with a clay sculpt. Everyone's going to have a different process, but this is my specific process. Sculpt it out in clay. It usually takes about a week, maybe 2. Depending on the sculpt, I'll be real nitpicky. Like, I'll take a lot of pictures of it. I'll put light all over it, just because a lot of times you'll look at it and then go, I did a good job. And then you'll go look at it on your computer, and you'll be like, holy shit, that sucks. And you got to go back and change it. So usually about a week to 2 weeks, nitpick. I mold it with a silicone brush up. It's like I just add a thickener to silicone, so it's like cake frosting. Do a quick brush up, about 2 or 3 to 4 layers, really, really thick. Then plaster bandage jacket. I just basically divide it in half like doing a head cast. Generate a master positive that I will clean up, get all the flaws out of it. Then I will remold that for my production molds. And generally, I like to use urethane rubber. With the exception of Green Goblin here, he had to be painted specifically, a specific way, and urethane rubber is impossible to paint. There are ways to do it, but most of those are trade secrets, and most guys that know how to do it well don't tell you. It's like painting a milk jug. It's just hard to get it to stay. So with Green Goblin, he needed to be painted, so I used latex, but most of the time I use urethane, and the rubber can be tinted. Most of the popular items I make are black, so it's very easy to just tint the rubber black and get it out. But sometimes they'll want to color or color match, and that takes a little bit of finesse. But you know, I basically urethane rubber is a petroleum-based rubber. It's perfect for cosplay because latex is great. It's affordable, easy to use, but the problem is tricks. And after a while, if you ever look at a really old rubber band, it breaks down. Urethane, on the other hand, you can load it into a suitcase, you can wear it drunk at a party, and you know the only problem is it can tear. It's like a t-shirt, you know, it's just kind of like it's got flex and stretch, but if you are misusing it or mishandling it or you get aggressive with it, it can rip and it's a little bit difficult to repair. But if you take care of it, it's perfect because it definitely stands up and it's very collector friendly. Meaning it's not really gonna be it'll have a longer library life in your costume collection rather than latex would. They sort of break down. Like I go to a lot of effects shops and I see like props that I like from movies, and I look at it and I'm like, shit, this is really messed up. What happened? They're like, it's latex, man. It's organic material. It just disintegrates and deteriorates after a while, especially if you touch it, oils in your hands and stuff. But urethane rubber is my ideal choice of materials to use for that purpose. It just lasts a long time, and it's a little bit more difficult to use. So you got to really learn how to use it because you can make it too thick, you can make it too thin. Getting a right consistency is just all feel. It's like coating a frying pan. You know, it's like a lot of people are like, I didn't get the rubber to be a mask, and it's like think of a mold like an ice cube tray. You know, but you're making a hollow ice cube. You know what I mean? You just kind of like swish it around, and there's a gel stage, and then there's the finishing stage, and then it'll tack up and just stop moving. That's when you're done. I use about 3 layers, and for a finished mask, and it'll be consistently nice. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for consistent results.
all day.
Yeah,
it's true. Over here. I don't know. I think
we had the Rocky Horror Picture Show
thing. Yeah. Well, cool. Okay. And Chad and Nicole, I know you guys both use a lot of thermoplastics, right? And so, why don't we talk a little bit about use of thermoplastics and how you can warp it and detail it into cool stuff like that.
I actually have Warbler with me somewhere. I can come prepared.
That
so,
like picks up everything.
I don't want that near me. So I use Warbler. I first started off using craft foam, so that really cheap flat foam that little kids make cool stuff out of that their parents like hang on the fridge and they're all proud of. I used to use that, and you know, that'll only hold out for so long. And then I discovered Warbler, which is a thermoplastic. I think it's wood shavings and recycled plastic, and it comes in a gigantic sheet. I usually get 3 feet by 5 feet. It looks like a pita or tortilla chip. And I first started out by just heat forming it with a blow dryer over a craft foam, and it creates a hard shell. And you can also use a heat gun. And you can make all kinds of cool designs, and it makes your armor last longer, makes it look more realistic. There is a process to make it shiny like this, and it takes forever because Warbler does have this kind of grainy feel to it, and there's a lot of priming and a lot of sanding. Very tedious, but the products, the stuff that you can make with it is amazing. And I've been working with it for about 3 years, all different projects. And with the scraps, you can also make all different things. I used Warbler to make vines for my ivy. You can just actually mold it kind of like clay once you heat it up. So that's pretty cool.
And what do you use to do the detail work, some of the etching and things like that?
For the details, for certain raised areas, I wish I had it more on the armor I'm wearing, but I have, like my name more, I have these raised areas, and I use rope. So you can use different items underneath the Warbler to give it that raised area, the looks. And you can stack craft foam. So right here I have a layer of craft foam and then 2 other layers of craft foam. So I have this, and it gives that indent, if I'm making any sense. So different layers of craft foam and then Warbler on top of it. And then I use spray paints and acrylics to do my details.
Awesome. Chad, why don't you take us through some of the machining process that you use for some of your stuff?
Right. Well, believe it or not, you know, I'm wearing a EVA foam suit of armor. This is actually thermoforming plastic as well. Yeah, actually, I had a lot of fun with this, so I'll talk about this for starters. But one of the key benefits I found with EVA foam was it's super light. You can sand it, you can cut it, you use all hand tools. But more importantly for my workflow is I could laser cut and laser etch it. So if you turn the power down enough and you only partially cut through this material, that'll give you really, really intricate details. For example, I don't know if you guys can see on the surface right here, this isn't something I could ever hand cut. You know, it's as clean as it can get. But what's so cool about this material is it's cellular in nature. It's got tons of little tiny air bubbles in it, and so anytime you heat up a bubble, you know, you'll get a slight amount of expansion, and then when it cools down, it'll actually contract. And so all of these edges, the moment you hit them with heat, they kind of pop apart, and they give you this really cool kind of beveled look around the edge. So that's EVA foam. This is, like I said, this was this was experience gaining the whole process for DragonCon. But more importantly for the machining process, so one of the techniques that I use a lot is vacuum forming. I don't know who knows of that, but essentially you've got a big sheet of plastic, right? And you're going to heat that up until it becomes all stretchy and malleable, and then you're going to have a positive form. So, for example, this cup. You know, if this is a solid object and I pull this sheet of plastic over it, it's going to, you know, somewhat form over that. But the bottom of that table's got a bunch of holes in it. They're hooked up to a vacuum. Suck out all that air, it's going to form over that. Has anybody seen Burning's Dark Helmet? Yes, no? Okay, giant, right? So the way that I actually made that helmet, was by using vacuum forming. And it had to be a really big vacuum form, but by doing so, that round shape is actually very structurally strong. You could, you know, if you were careful, you could push down on that helmet, you kind of kick it, it's not going to break, right? Just because it's round.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do it, because
Hopefully without your
you'll be
head, right?
upset. But I've got a couple more at the house, you know, that I have done too, so it's kind of fun. But what that allows you to do is it allows you to make this form. It's really big, but also lightweight. The big benefit also with vacuum forming is you get a pristinely clean surface, a little bit of primer, a little bit of sanding, and then you can paint it and it's done. It's perfectly smooth. And that's my workflow.
Cool. Before we go forward, I just want to start seeing what kind of show of hands if you're going to have questions and things later and stuff like that. Cool over there. All right, cool. All right, we'll get to that in just a sec. Why don't you guys talk about some of the early stage, what you have to do to prepare in making like an intricate prop, or the first time that you, because now you have molds, right? So you can just whip stuff out kind of. But the first time you do it, any of the planning process, you know, tips and tricks in that respect to set yourself up for success in a prop build.
Okay, well, I'll use the most recent example is the bat fleck cowl. It had to look, I wanted it to look like the cowl. So what I did was, there weren't a whole lot of pictures of it. So once I did start getting a bunch of photos of it, in particular the profile. I find for me it's a lot easier to really get a likeness by sculpting it from the profile, because then you can gauge all the, you know, you can measure like the brow to the nose to the chin, and so forth. So yeah, so what I did was I got as much photographic reference as I could, and luckily San Diego Comic-Con had the cowl on display with no glass, with the cape just kind of turning around, and I just sat there the entire weekend and took every possible angle, picture, every shot. I even had some guy lift me up so I could take a picture of the top of the head. I tried to take a picture of the inside of the cowl, but I got yelled at. I even pinched the nose, got yelled at. But yeah, photographic reference is how I prepare. And I hang it up all over my workshop board right before I'm ready to sculpt. And I just sit there and I study it. It's almost similar to like what Rocky did, you know, he put up pictures of like the guy who's gonna fight just to kind of psych himself out. It's a little bit like that. And when people come into the shop, they're like, what is this? What are you doing? Because it's very, you know, CSI looking, you know, because there's just mug shots of just like random, you know, and sometimes I'll just, I'll also go into Photoshop, take the picture, and change the tint on the picture so I can, like, certain things pop out more than others, and you know, just so I can concentrate on looking at shapes rather than a whole image. So I did that a lot on the Affleck outfit, because it's, you know, before I knew that they basically based his brow off Ben Affleck's angry face. So when the guys that worked on it for the movie had a ton of pictures of Ben Affleck doing this, like all over their shop. So
from the reviews of Geely, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. Does anybody even remember Geely? Okay, all right. There's a couple people with that. All right. But yeah, that's what I do. Photographic reference as much as possible, and I always take breaks. It's like, because a lot of times if I overdo it, if I sit there for like hours and hours and hours, I'm just going to mess up and create more work for myself. So when I'm feeling fatigued, or kind of like I'm not really finding the forms, I take a break. And I look at pictures, and I take pictures of everything. And I circle problem areas, print them out, bring them back, and correct them. And I've done it so often that I can usually nail it like within the first week. The first 24 hours, I hate the sculpt. Like it's never going to look like you want it, ever. I don't care how fast you are. So you're always going to come back to it and go, I don't like that, and you're going to change it. So so if anybody out there is like looking to start, you know, sculpting, allow yourself at least a week. You know what I mean, to kind of find it. And usually by the second week, it's a lot of refining and detailing and smoothing. That's what I do. Photographic reference. That's my advice.
Well, I do characters that I'm passionate about, and I've either followed them in comic books or cartoons or movies or whatnot. And so I'll give an example for a comic book character. Like you were saying, photographic reference. Try to find as many pictures of the character as you can, all different angles. And sometimes it's so tough because some of like the little comic book cells are like this big, and it's like, oh, that's when I can see the back of the costume, and it's so tiny. And a lot of these costumes, they can't be worn on real people. They make no sense. There's armor that's just that's staying on the shoulders, but it's in real life. They're not just, you're not gonna have armor just sitting on your shoulders, like just levitating on there.
And body proportions.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And then they don't have seams on any of their costumes, so you kind of have to get creative with it. And a lot of materials, you're not going to, necessarily go and make everything out of armor, just like the actual characters. So you look at the costumes and think, how can I use materials I'm comfortable with or want to experiment with? And there's so many different things. I mean, you can go from something cheap like craft foam to, different thermoplastics and everything like that to replicate the metal look. So I just do a lot of research and just stare at these characters and the photos for so long, trying to think of how I can bring 2D art to real life. And yeah, so it's a lot of experimenting, a lot of trial and error, especially after I make everything. That's when I'm like, okay, well, I've made all these pieces that I saw in the photos, but how do I even wear this? And I've had to have people, I had to stand there and have people start putting it on me, like, okay, how are we gonna rig this to that? And it's, yeah, it's an interesting process, but yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, and you will have to you're gonna wanna go back and fix things. You're gonna learn from your mistakes and give yourself time. I'm saying that when I do costumes in like 3 days, but give yourself time to, learn those mistakes and figure things out.
Chad?
This is kind of advice. It's something that I struggled with when I first started, and I had to learn. But I think one of the most important things, especially for myself, is not to go too far too quick. When you're first making the costume, the single most important aspect of all of these costumes is that the base forms are right. If you have the base form wrong and you have all this gorgeous detail, it's still gonna look wrong. And so, rather than looking at all of the tiny itty-bitty little details and hyper-focusing on those and making sure that you're spending way too much money on all of these, take a step back and make sure, like I said, that the base form of it is all right. If you're going to do, for example, an EVA foam armor or a Wordgla armor or even a sculpt, spend more time making sure that you have this costume set up to look right before you start gluing other stuff onto it. Otherwise, it's going to be a wasted effort. So I don't know if that makes sense, but my 2 cents.
Cool. Let's open it up for some questions. So we had Catwoman.
Okay. So I have a question for you. First of all, I'm really jealous that you have back and forth, the 3D printing. That's awesome. But what is your favorite foam to use besides the EVA? For someone who just goes to Home Depot, or what are other foams that you like to use?
Well, EVA foam is actually readily available. You can find it at Home Depot. You can find it at Lowe's. Yoga mats are EVA foam. Walmart. Your craft foam down at Joann's and Michael's. That's EVA foam. EVA foam, on a more professional level, is equivalent to something called L300 and L400, back and forth. The only benefit of those is that they do not have a texture on them, and they come in sheets. So this is all, majority is hardwood.
Well, EVA is basically a brand of that type of foam, yeah. Similar to Kleenex and tissue are the same thing.
Right.
I was wondering if you prefer the L200, L3, all those other ones.
So for my purpose, L200 I've found to be too soft. It's not very durable. It's really good for padding helmets or padding other things, for giving you some space, but you can't make straps out of it. They just fall apart. L300 is a better solution. Now, The other problem I ran into with L200 is when you score it, I mean, I'm not even talking laser etch it, but just score it with a razor blade. If you heat it up, it'll just basically melt itself back together, so you don't get that effect that you get from the L300 and L400. So.
What about like heating like curves on foam? Do you have like certain tricks besides like the curves and or hills and valleys? Like do other?
So I totally cheat. I use software. So back to the modeling world. Whenever you have a 3D model, it's got a texture on it, right? And so that texture is associated with the flat artwork, right? And so what they did is they took the model and stretched it out flat and then painted it in something like Photoshop. This is a very similar process to like Pepakura. I don't know if you've seen that at all. But the software I use, I basically just tell it where I want all of this model to unfold, basically where all the cuts are going to be, and it keeps all those edges the same length. And so what that allows me to do is when you pull those two edges together, you're going to create tension, and that tension is going to cause more complex curvature. So keep in mind though, you can just stack a bunch of foam together and just start grinding away at it with the Dremel. Okay. So you can get some pretty cool shapes that way too.
I have one more question. For like priming and painting, do you have any other like your favorite brands?
Yeah. So outside of I forget the Krylon Fusion. That's a spray paint that is flexible. That is the only spray paint I know of that will flex with EVA foam. I don't use it though. So I'll seal everything really, really heavily with Plastidip. And then I use two water-based paints. It's called Createx and Wicked. Those are more automotive grade water-based paints. But the color variety that you have in those is so much better than what you're gonna find anywhere else. So, and you can get them off of Amazon. And they come in like 2 ounce, 4 ounce, 8 ounce, 16 ounce tubes. Good price, you get way more volume compared to like a can spray paint. Because spray paint is essentially like 80% propellant or air, and then 20% actual paint. So don't waste your money on that crap.
So Krylon and Wicked, you said?
Krylon Fusion.
Krylon?
Yeah. My buddy Will at WM Armor uses that. He likes it.
I think the lady with the fabulous mohawk had a question.
Thank you.
Super jelly.
Do you guys have any tips on mixing alginate? Because it's really frustrating to get the timing right.
Mixing alginate?
I actually stopped using alginate because I found it was temperamental. It's just basically getting the temperature of the water correct. It's also going to depend on the brand. I know that Reynolds, I've used them all, Reynolds Advanced Materials in Burbank. They have an alginite. I used to use their AlgaSafe. I found that it's all going to have to go by feel. If there's cold, warm, and hot water. But I found just somewhere between cold and warm is probably the best. It just gives you more working time, especially if the water's a little bit cold. It's almost like with plaster. Like, colder the water, the longer it's going to take to set up. And it just gives you better working time. Are you having a problem with it like setting up too fast, or?
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Is describe your problem.
Yeah, it's lumpy.
Yeah, it will, like,
more water.
Yeah.
Just like usually what I do is I put the powder in first, and I usually mix up a lot of alginite because it's pretty inexpensive. So I like to have more and just like have a second bucket ready with the same amount, so someone can just, if I'm applying it, it's kicking off. I was like, water, and then just have another person mixing it up, and also use baking soda and water, because sometimes alginate won't stick to itself. Soda bottle, or a little spray bottle with a little bit of baking soda and water, shake it up, just spritz it and it'll bond to itself. But like I said, it's going to depend on the brand, and but I would go more cooler water. It'll give you more working time.
You said Reynolds?
Reynolds Advanced Materials in Burbank, yeah.
Thanks.
Those guys are awesome.
And are there any online resources for that?
Yeah, Reynolds online, or you can go to monstermakers.com. Those guys are like a beginner's one-stop shop for people who want to like make masks and do effects stuff. And then if you're in the LA area, there's a million places you can go up there, like Nigel's. Yeah.
You know, I've got something quick to add. Because you're probably under a bit more of a budget than this guy, rather than, you know, he told you the trick for bonding it. So what I like to do is I mix it in single cups. I'll do a single cup, and I'll actually do a test, see how fast it's setting up at what temperature, and that'll give me kind of an estimate of how much time I have to work. And then, so I'll just do it like a cup at a time, because then you have a guaranteed amount of time in which it goes from liquid state to gel to complete snap care. So just work a little bit slower, maybe.
Cool. You guys can go ahead and raise hands if anyone has questions. Yep, right there.
Mr. Reeves,
yes.
What do you use as a base to sculpt on?
A base to sculpt on?
Yeah.
I use just generic head forms. There's a couple of things that you can do. There's a company called CFX, cfx.com. They sell a generic head form. Also, monster makers, they also carry a generic head form. There's also mannequin heads that you can use. I would measure them first. Some of them run very small. And then there's also people who sell actual celebrity head casts on eBay that you can just get. Like there's someone who sells Angelina Jolie's full head cast. That would be perfect for sculpting on, especially like she's kind of tall. She has a really proportionate, symmetrical head. It's easy to just like slap clay on it. Plus, if you have to build something really, really big, you just always keep adding to it. But there's a few options out there. If you don't want to go the mannequin head route, you want something a little bit more, you know, like, oh, this is a real person's head. Head casts on eBay, and CFX or monster makers, they carry those things.
Now, you guys do this professionally, and Nicole, you picked this up as a hobby, and now you get to go all over the world, which is pretty awesome. But how did you build your prop making skills?
I get inspired by people that I meet. I met him when I first started, so I would ask him questions or, you know, get inspiration from his art. I just, like I said before, it's a lot of trial and error, and I learn what works and what doesn't work. And with each project, I'm building my skills. So I'm always testing myself as well. I'll take on challenges and everything. And the internet is amazing for resources. There's always new materials coming out, new products to make things. YouTube, you can...
The University of YouTube.
You can learn everything on YouTube. And I mean, there's also different websites that'll have tutorials. It's just, somebody's probably done it before and has a tutorial out there. It's fantastic.
Have you made any tutorials?
No, I have no time. I don't know what I'm doing the whole time too. Right. So I'm making it as I go, and I can't really sit there and explain to somebody like, this is what I'm doing, because I'm like, what? No, like I can't do a tutorial like as I'm making something, because I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just happening, and I'm learning if it's gonna work or not. So.
Cool, awesome. All right, so why don't you guys talk about what was the most challenging project either of you has ever worked on? You know, whether you suffered setbacks or it's a skill set you had to learn or something like that, and how did you overcome that?
I gotta think about that one. You guys go first.
There's a challenge with most of the costumes. Like I was saying, bringing 2D art to real life. And I also do redesigns of male characters. And a lot of male character, well, the male body is more flat in front. So when I redesign it, yep. Ladies have boobs. So I have to redesign them and put a woman's curves into the design. So that's always a challenge. For a comedian, I had to take a completely flat, like bulletproof vest and try to figure out the curves. And I couldn't just add boobs to it because the lines will all curve different ways. And what I did was craft foam, Warbler, and then each of the lines is made from a piece of rope. And once I got one cup of the boob done with all the rope, and I started doing the other, and it starts to curve differently, so it's not symmetrical. I have to keep ripping the rope up over and over again. It took months to finally just get it just right, and it's tough. And I love the challenge though. I love redesigning the characters, and also a lot of male characters, they have no shirt, so I have to design something to cover the parts that aren't. That are female. So
is that a thing you set out to do crossplay, or
dress like a man?
you just fell into, like, you realized you like characters that happen to do that?
Yeah, I've always been more a fan of the male characters in the comic book universe, and I have to be passionate about the character in order to want to cosplay as them, or I'm not going to spend like 100+ hours making the costume. So, and I like the challenge of redesigning them, but still showing my love for the character. It lets me be really creative, and that's how my mind works, being able to make something fun out of it.
Cool. Do you guys have enough time to think about your most challenging project?
I just thought of mine.
Cool. Well then,
He needs a moment.
we'll let you go and chat.
The Ben Affleck cowl. The Ben Affleck cowl. I did a sculpt right after San Diego Comic-Con last year, based on
That one image that
right
came
on
out.
those images, and I thought I nailed it. And then I saw other pictures, and I didn't. So what I did was I had to resculpt it because I want that one. Like I really liked it, so I really wanted to do the best job I possibly could on it. So I just scrapped the first one, even though everybody was like, "No, what are you doing? Don't throw that away." I throw it away, and I just started over. And I really took my time. Like again, pictures, reference. Anytime something would leak, anytime it would be on display somewhere, I'd be like, "Hey, go in there and take some pictures of the nose, or take a picture of the eyebrow," because some things I thought I would have enough reference for, and it just turned out that I didn't. Or I didn't think, I should have taken it from this angle. So the Affleck cowl was probably my most challenging because I wanted it to look as close to the original as possible, and that's always going to be an issue because you can get 10 guys to sculpt it, and it'll look. And 10 guys will do it 10 different ways. I just I wanted to please myself mostly, and I'm a harsh critic. Like when I work on something, I usually take about 100 pictures of it and just decide on one before I post anything. And I always have to make sure I'm satisfied with it first, and then I'll present it.
Now that was on display in San Diego this year.
Yeah.
Did you need that reference in person to finish it, or had you completed it before then, and how did that match up?
I completed it probably the sculpt about 3 weeks before Comic-Con. That statue was on display in Vegas at a trade show. They revealed the Trinity statues, and then I found out they were going to have them at Comic-Con. But I had a friend of mine in Vegas go, "Hey, do you know these statues are here?" And I was like, "Take pictures." And so he got really close, took a bunch of pictures, and I really didn't need to see those because I had already gotten my hands on some really good reference. So I was able to finish it. But that kind of set it over the line. I was like, "Oh, okay, the neck muscles are." It was good to check to see if to use them as basically to see if they matched up. Plus, also those statues is altered a little bit. So yeah, it helped a little bit.
Awesome. Chad, what about your biggest challenge?
I'm just going to talk about a challenge. One that really comes to mind is Comic-Con about 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. I was doing a weapon from Legend of Zelda for a friend of mine. It's called the Megaton Hammer. Big guy, right? Big heavy monster. Yeah. So everything was going really well. I had the whole. Whenever you make a mold, you have the master. That's what you spend all the time making. And the master looked great. I was very satisfied with it. And so the shape of it was very complex. So I had to do what's called a matrix mold. And so that means it's got multiple parts that all have to come together perfectly for the silicone. It's the silicone skin, right? Those all kind of interlock. And you've got a hard shell that interlocks with itself. That hard shell keeps the silicone in place. And then you're able to pour your resin in, slush cast it, or foam cast it, or whatever. So I had enough time, and I made this mold, and I go to start demolding it. I try to let molds cure 2 to 3 times as long as they're supposed to, just because I've had bad luck with this specific project. But I had let it cure plenty of time. I go to pull the first side off, and it wasn't cured. And so I carefully put it back and let it sit for another day. I pulled it out, and it still wasn't cured. I'm going, well, crap, I've got, you know, less than a week before Comic-Con, I need to get this thing done. Suffice to say, it did not get done well, and I was very humble. Was humbled by this whole process and begged forgiveness for my friend. I gave them something that they could carry around with them for the day, but the moment I got home from Comic-Con, I immediately went back to work and proceeded to work and remake the whole thing, because during the demolding process, the master got destroyed. So that was a painful one.
Did you figure out what the issue was, why it wouldn't cure?
So once in a while you get a bad batch of silicone. Yeah. So I had 3 molds actually going on at the same time. This was the most important one, and every single one didn't cure properly. And they were all cast separately. So what I ended up doing when I got home, and I took this, I still had, an entire gallon worth of silicone. I mixed the whole damn bucket, and I took a concrete blender to it to see if it would cure. It wouldn't cure. So not much I could have done about that one.
Cool. Awesome. I want to open it back up to you guys for questions. We got about 10 more minutes. Questions, mold making, cows. Yes, back to the Oscar.
You guys know a really good master pose or something about which glues work with which colors, you guys know off the top of your head?
Are you talking like EVA foam?
Any foam.
You're talking about adhesives?
Yeah, adhesives.
So which adhesives work best for which materials? Well, some of it, Warbler, if I'm not mistaken, adheres to other plastics.
Yep.
It's tacky, and that'll just bond itself. But what are some other go-to adhesives?
I use super glue on everything. It's the trick with super glue is a lot of people gob it on, and it won't kick. The thinnest you can probably, usually what I do if I have to bond super glue to something, especially urethane rubber, which not a lot of things bonds with, I usually squirt a little bit on like a tongue depressor. I take my finger and I rub the area. Looks like it's not even on there, and then I just contact it, and it will hold a lot more than if you put a bunch of super glue on there and let it stick.
Great sound effect.
It would. So that's what I did for. I did a Predator in the dreadlocks with foam, and I had to bond it to urethane rubber. And there's a bunch of like urethane rubber glues, but they're really expensive, and I didn't have time to go buy them, so I just have a ton of super glue in my shop. So I just use that, worked fine. Depending on the piece, depending on like how, depending on what you're going to need it for. Like if it's going to have a lot of movement, you're probably going to want to go with something stronger. Would you recommend anything stronger for?
There's really one major question you have to answer first is whether or not the material you're gluing is flexible or rigid. So super glue is really good, but the problem is it's incredibly rigid. It will not flex at all. The moment you flex it, it shatters. Okay, so one alternative is they sell a flexible or a rubberized super glue, and that will give you a bit of give, and it's all the way that the super glue, the way it works is it's got a bunch of chains inside of it. That's what plastics are. They're a bunch of polymer chains, and as they heat up, they tighten up. And so that rubber glue doesn't tighten up as much, so it's a little bit flexible. Barge contact cement is incredible stuff. It's also incredibly disgusting.
Yes.
But it works great. I am held together by it. Every single snap, rivet, there's not an ounce of super glue on this costume.
And is that in part because of the porous nature of the fabric? Is that why you went with barge over super glue?
No, barge I can just buy a gallon of.
Okay.
Yeah, I buy a gallon of it, and it's fairly easy to clean up. Whereas super glue, the moment it's cured, there's a couple things that'll break it down, but it's too much. It's too complex of a weave, so to speak, to really get it off.
Where did you buy the barge from? Because when I tried to buy it one time, I couldn't find it anywhere.
So you can buy it at Nigel's in the professional area, back in the special effects area. I don't think you need a professional license to buy it there.
No.
You can also buy it from Save More Leather, which if you guys haven't been to Save More Leather in Fashion District, it is a wonderful place to buy leather. They also have all sorts of dyes, the paints for leather, as well as barge, original and the new crab. Don't buy this stuff off of Amazon, it's crap. The stuff you want is in a yellow container, and it will have all sorts of precautions. You have to wear a respirator when you work with it. and work with it outside because it soaks into your walls and it'll stay stinky. So.
Wouldn't it maybe be wise, I mean, kind of any adhesive is going to off-gas a little bit, so
Yeah.
respirator's not a terrible idea.
Yeah, I mean,
and certainly you don't want to have, and you don't want to have foam that you might be dremeling or otherwise making particles appear in the air and get that all up in the nostril.
Yeah, so those gases are bad for not only your lungs though, but your eyes, your skin. So, I mean, if you're working with a really strong odor material that's off-gassing, typically you want to wear long sleeve shirt, gloves, you know, face mask, respirator. Always wear safety glasses. It's a big recommendation. So.
Cool. All right, what about upcoming projects? What are some interesting things that we can look forward to seeing from you guys in the next couple months?
I don't even know. I have a gigantic list, and that's been going on for years now. But I'll wake up one morning and an idea will pop in my head, and that's what I'll work on. There's so many different things. I don't even know at this point.
Well, for me, I've wanted to, like, I got a list of sort of like one day I'll get to it projects. One of them was Green Goblin, and I finally finished it, so I'm moving on to my next project, which I love the Thundercats. I really love the Thundercats.
Yes.
And I want to do a head-to-toe line, and it will happen very soon.
For you to wear, or just to have done it?
I don't wear them, but I
need someone.
But I
this
think,
guy.
we'll talk. We got it. But yeah, Lion-O. And then actually I'd like to do all of them. But I'll start with Lion-O. I have
Alicia Maria's Chitara. I mean, it just needs to happen.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my next project that I really want to like just knock out of the park. I see a lot of Lion-O attempts, and I think that they're great. But I have a very specific idea on how I'd like to do it, and I like classic Lion-O, not that new shit.
Yeah, no.
I mean, no, like the orange, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So Lion-O will be the next thing.
More Destiny stuff?
I really want to make that giant eagle flaming hammer. Do it. I don't know if anybody plays Destiny. There's a new expansion coming out. But
no, I just watch your video clips of you playing Destiny.
So I want to make a Terminator eye that goes inside. So I don't know if you guys saw it with a big left eye. So I'm working with a couple of electronic engineers to figure out the electronics part, but I want to embed a tiny little LED inside a fake eye and have the full Terminator action going on. Keep in mind the fake eye moves. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's, yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I want to do for a personal sake.
Cool. Awesome. Any last questions, guys? Yeah, no? Cool. Okay. Well, yep.
Oh, I just want to compliment your work, because
thank you,
I've
sir.
seen you throughout like a couple of like cosplay pages and like a couple of places and people selling you the stuff that they've bought from you and all that stuff. And yeah, I just think the cowl's gorgeous, and I love your work.
Thank you, sir. I admire that hammer.
Back there. And if anyone needs notes, see her.
Just to be able to follow you guys or keep in contact or see what is, how can we...
Yeah, let's do all your social media stuff.
I use mostly Facebook, and that'd be under Nicole Marie Jean or / Nicole Marie Jean page. I'm also on Instagram at Nicole M Jean and Twitter at official NMJ.
And I am on everything. ReevzFX. ReevzFX. Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Snapchat's not just for porn?
No. Well, prop making.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is my super secret project I'm working on. You have 6 seconds to view it.
Correct. Good.
That would be an interesting thing, like sneak peeks that don't last.
Way ahead of you. Already doing it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Hoku Props, HOKUPROPS. I'm on everything except for Snapchat, but that'll change tonight. I want to see this guy's stuff.
Yeah.
And speaking of upcoming projects, if you have nothing, I need the little the skull rattler from Hercules, because I'm gonna do Hades at Kamikaze. Just throwing that out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool.
This is how I get business, Bernie.
I'm gonna do this thing, and you got about a month to knock it out for me.
Yeah. I still want to do Gideon's sword.
Yes, well, as soon as you make the sword, I've got the suit. So, yeah, I've got like
Pixel
8
sword.
things coming up. Cool. Well, I'm Bernie of Nerds Like Us. Tell you about a couple of events coming up. For those of you that want to hang out with a lot of the awesome people in this room and a lot of these guys, we'll all be at Club Cosplay on Friday, October 2nd, which is at the Anaheim House of Blues in downtown Disney. And it is a nightclub for nerds. Not at all your standard nightclub, but it's a bunch of us partying and having fun, and you can wear a costume or not. It's cool. But you guys should definitely check that out. I'll be throwing the free after party for Kamikaze on Saturday, Halloween night. You have your badge for Kamikaze, you just go to the after party at Club Nokia across the street. And it's going to be an awesome, awesome party. A lot of cool celebs will be there. The Flux Capacitors, an amazing 80s cover band, will be there. DJ Galactic Ray from Club Cosplay. It's going to be super cool. And if you guys like 80s and 90s nerd culture films, we'll be screening Army of Darkness back on the big screen in Hollywood at the Vista Theater on Friday, the 16th of October. And then we will have The Addams Family on Friday, the 13th of November. And I just got word that it may be that Pugsley will be appearing at The Addams Family. So you guys can come check that out. All my stuff is online at Nerds Like Us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Nerds Like Us. And I tweet out a lot of their stuff, so we'll help you stay in contact with all that. Thanks so much, guys, for coming out to the panel. And we'll all be wandering around outside if you guys have other questions, compliments, pictures.